Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's fantastic to be here. Another episode of Conversations with Compassion. With me, Helen Ferguson. I'm a therapist, trauma-informed therapist and emotional empowerment coach, helping women to emotionally recover from trauma and emotional overwhelm and challenging life experiences through self-compassion. So shifting and shedding the shame of all the self-criticism and self-belief and lack of self-belief rather, and embracing self-compassion as a true healing and empowering process. And I am really, really excited this morning. This is like, I'm buzzed excited because I've known Mandy. I was figuring out, Mandy, you and I have known each other now for about 31 years. But I'm really excited to have Mandy here with us this morning, and we're going to rock this conversation about compassion and healing. So, Mandy, over to you to introduce yourself. I didn't get the drum roll app that I promised, but I'm going I'm going with it. I'll do that.
Absolutely brilliant. Okay, so hello, I'm Mandi Colvin, and I'm an energy worker and tarot reader in its most basic form, I guess, if you like, in its simplest form. I work with crystal healing, angelic Reiki, various types of energy work, really. I even see my tarot reading as a healing tool to bring compassion and healing to people, to help them to discover that. But basically, I think the majority of my clients are women. They are female or identify as female, although there are some men in there. But really, what it boils down to is that I work with all forms of stress, wherever that comes from, really, however that appears for the client, because it's often not what they think it is. Very much surface issues in day-to-day life that are absolutely triggers, but quite often it comes from other places. So I kind of help to stop the zooming around, if you like, that people often find themselves in our current day and age. And we, so it's initially about relaxing, and then we look at the deeper work that goes on within that. So that's what I do.
Brilliant. And I mean, I know firsthand, because of course, I've had a tarot reading with you. I've had a business tarot reading with you for the whole of this year, which was an amazing process. So I'd highly recommend that to anybody who's watching that wants to link in with Mandy around that. And also kind of, I've also, because we experience compassion fatigue as entrepreneurs and as healers, I've also sought your help in just helping me kind of manage, some of the trauma and some of the experiences that I've had to link in with through my work. So it is amazing to have you here, Mandy. It is amazing. Sarah and Lizzie both say good morning. Good morning, both of you. It's fantastic you're here. So I'm gonna kick off. This is not a Q&A session with you, Mandy. That's not my style particularly. But I kind of just want to start the conversation off with thinking with you and talking with you about how do you think about compassion, both as an energy healer, but also within yourself as a woman, as an entrepreneur, as a mum, as someone with a family. Where does it kind of sit with? I know it's a big question actually. Where does it kind of sit with your life? Do you, because I know with my work, for example, it's there all the time, and when I'm working with it, it's there. So where is it with you? How do you think about compassion in your work, but also in your life?
Okay.
Good question.
I think no, that's fine. It's huge, so I'll try and keep it simple. But I think initially, certainly personally, on a personal level, it's something that I've had to learn. I don't think it's something that comes naturally to us, because there are so many. This is kind of where I start getting a bit deeper, because we work with beliefs and patterns and expectations that are that we absorb from such a young age that actually compassion is something I feel that we kind of need to relearn on a personal level.
Absolutely.
Because it's not, we feel it very much for other people, you know, but we don't feel it for ourselves. And I have been just as guilty of self-criticism, of self-doubt, of fear, and of kind of, you know, that beating up of yourself that goes on with that. So on a personal level, it's been a real journey for me to be able to understand that as a healer. And when I'm working with clients, I think it's very much about understanding that the situations that they come to me with, quite often, the initial way that I would work with compassion is to actually hold that space for them. A lot of times they're so busy in their heads and with their lives in general that actually some of the first comments are, goodness, I haven't ever spoken about that to anyone. I haven't ever got that out. The actual space to just stop, breathe, and get it all out, you know, is a new experience, which is actually really sad. You know, it's really sad. It's a massive eye-opener that actually we spend so much time just doing for other people and in our own heads as well. That actually, like I say, it's a process or a situation that needs to be relearned, I think. And that can be, when that light bulb happens, then we can start to practice it.
And it's an amazing light bulb when it happens, because, you know, like you know, like your work, you know, when women come to me, and like you, occasionally men filter into, you know, but, you know, almost kind of the first thing that people say to me is, well, I've always thought this way. I've always felt like this. You know, those self-criticism, those self-critical thoughts, those lack of self-beliefs, those judgments, those real, you know, shaming judgments of themselves. And I say to and I challenge them. I say, no, you haven't. You haven't always felt like this. You haven't always thought this way.
Exactly.
Because you weren't born with thinking that you weren't good enough. B, you weren't playing with your toys, you know, at the age of 2, you know, going, oh gosh, I've got to stop this now, because I'm clearly not good enough a person to do this. You know, I'm clearly not worthy. I can't wear this dress because I'm not worthy. I can't wear these dungarees because I'm not worthy. You know, this happens. You're absolutely right. Though all of that comes from what happens in life and the statements and the experiences that people have, usually from others, that then become these statements that they own, rather than understanding that they can separate themselves out from it.
Absolutely. Yeah, completely. And that's the starting point, you know, very much. Absolutely. And it's almost sometimes a shock or a surprise, you know, when we start peeling back the layers, when they do actually give themselves that space to be able to talk about it. And obviously the work within the energy session, the energy healing session. And when you actually repeat back to people how their thoughts are presenting, what they're saying about themselves, and it's a shock, you know, it's a real surprise to them. And quite often I can find that with that, as we're lifting those layers and they're having those recognitions, that anger can come through, you know, but it starts with the self anger. Why have I let people do this to me? Why have I let that situation do that to me? You know, so yeah, it's really interesting.
I mean, that's happened this week with one of my clients. She's a young woman in Greece, and she said to me, I can't understand why I'm agitated and I'm frustrated, and you know, I'm feeling angry, and you know, and I had to, you know, I talked with her exactly that, you know, because you've been peeling back the layers, and we've started the inner child healing work with her, or we together rather, and exactly that. And people like you say, they get surprised that this anger's there, this frustration is there, And then they think, oh, well, have I changed as a person? No, it's just actually anger is an expression of a need. So it's okay, you know.
And it's
Don't,
it's perfectly natural, natural, and it's
yeah.
fine.
It is, yeah. It's you know, no emotion is a bad emotion. They're necessary because they show us the way. They show us what we need. They guide us. We just have to listen to them instead of dampening them down or putting them away because then we're denying what we need.
Absolutely.
So it's, you know, so yeah, it's the don't, if you're watching and you're feeling frustrated or angry, don't try and push it away. Just think about what you need.
No.
So what about kind of, you know, as an entrepreneur, you know, I don't want to move away necessarily from that conversation per se, but, you know, as an entrepreneur, because, and especially an entrepreneur and a heart-centered entrepreneur, you know, we come across and absorb so much of what our clients have experienced, you know, what they're going through. We're listening all the time, you know, and we're hearing, not just listening, we're hearing, we're compassionate listeners. There's the danger, if you like, of developing compassion fatigue, that sense of, you know, not being able to give in the same way. You know, when you think about looking after yourself in your work, how do you do that? Because I'm asking the question because there could be people watching that are, you know, partners of somebody who's going through any kind of emotional healing and recovery, that, you know, is sitting alongside that. And when you're sitting alongside it and you feeling helpless with it, you know, you can start to kind of feel a sense of fatigue, a sense of compassion fatigue, which is that inability not to be able to give and empathize as well as we would do normally. What do you do? Is there anything that you do to look after yourself in that process of?
Absolutely. And again, that's been a learning journey. And I think the thing is, you know, there are various things you can do, but it's actually about what works for you. So what has become apparent, shall we say, is boundaries, really. And I mean, I've always been pretty good with boundaries in whatever work situation, client situation, but being an entrepreneur is a different kind of boundary almost, I feel. And that is as much as, so it could be really practical things like organizing the time out after the appointment, you know, that's really important, but it's what I do in that time out. So sometimes I can, you know, leave an appointment and with a client and it will stay with me, you know. So I have various tools, but the first one is actually to allow it to stay with me. You know, not to a point of flooring me, if you like, but again, as we were just talking about, not pushing stuff down, because compassion is should be a really natural part of life. But I do allow it. I don't try to shove it down. That's what I'm saying. But I find for me, so putting in the boundaries around the hours that I work, the number of clients I see, the amount of time I have available, if that doesn't sound wrong, but certainly putting in that time afterwards. And I find that for me, physical movement really helps. You know, so it's that kind of go and do something. And I don't mean to distract yourself, but move that energy, because quite often when you're holding space for someone else, and this is for people in their personal lives as much as anything else, you know, once you've finished holding that space, you need to go and do something for yourself. You know, it can't be a constant. When it's a constant, it will drain someone's energy completely, and they'll start to suffer with maybe minor illnesses like colds or coughs or, you know, aches and pains and all of those sorts of things. So it's really important to kind of shift the energy. You know, very much so. Like I say, even if it's someone else that someone is caring for. But it's also something around planning that time in. So planning that time into your day, you know, whether it is just 10 minutes to step outside your front door or into your garden if you have one, all of those sorts of things, to really just clear and breathe. Breathing is so important. How, you know, it's an automatic thing, but how often are we conscious of it?
Yeah.
You know? And even,
you're so right. I mean, that conscious breathing is, you know, when I'm talking with anyone about it, even, you know, even my husband, when he says, don't start therapizing me. So it's, you know, when you listen, when you connect with your breathing and you really connect with it, you activate the self-soothe system. You tell the central nervous system that you're now in charge. They don't have to feel, you know, it doesn't have to be on the kind of cusp of threat, and keep you in that state. You know, you activate the self-soothe system through connecting with your breathing, actively noticing. Leo's joining in from outside, actively noticing. He's always a joiner in. You know, actively noticing your breathing, really connecting with it, because you activate the self-soothe system, and that's almost the first thing that I get people to do, because it's so important, and it's one that people really struggle with. You know,
because it's such an unconscious thing, and we don't use it as a tool because it's automatic.
Because it's automatic. Yeah. But then when you stop and you start to get people to think, and even myself, you know, I'm working with a police officer in the UK at the moment who, you know, is almost kind of said hadn't realised how much trauma they were having to deal with on a daily basis. It was just life, you know. And one of the first things I said to them was, right, we're going to get you to connect with your breathing. And they were a bit kind of skeptical, I have to say, because they particular mentality that they have to have with their work.
Absolutely.
But, you know, I got them to really, you know, connect with that breathing, and it was so emotional. It was hugely emotional for them. That once we had done that very first bit, that was when they actually broke down and cried, and it was just this release, you know. And they said, I don't know why I'm crying, and I said, because you're releasing, it's fine. You know, it's you know, there's so many different ways that of what crying means, but it's a release, it's an emotional release, and you know, activating that self-soothe system, really connecting with your breathing in that way, just gets you to be able to be with yourself and connect with yourself and understand often how much you've been holding. And so it's very, very powerful, a very, very powerful tool. But you're right. Actually, what happens is that people, because it's unconscious, because we just breathe, you know, we don't often take the time to notice it and connect with it. Sorry.
Exactly, and you couple that with the zooming that goes on in everyday life that we all feel that we have to do, and breathing is the last thing, you know. Taking that pause is the last thing that we feel, and then we start talking about, I don't have time to. You know?
And I've even heard the same, I don't have time for self-compassion. And I'm like, ooh, right. Then here's the challenge, because I'm like the self-compassion queen. So if you're going to work with me, we're going to connect you with your self-compassion. We're going to make time for you to connect with self-compassion. And it's really interesting, because usually kind of third session is when I know I'm going to be challenged in that session by every person I work with, and I almost kind of prepare for it in this, you know, beforehand. I know session 3 is going to be the one where they challenge me, because it's literally that statement of I don't have time, I don't know, you know, it's self-indulgent, it's lazy.
Self-indulgent, it's lazy. I'm lazy if I do that. If I give myself some time and space, I'm like, yeah, all of it.
Yeah. So I think, you know, our biggest challenge often as healers is actually getting people to that point of understanding that they are important and looking after themselves and giving themselves compassion and just giving themselves that internal love is not self-indulgent. It's powerful, and it's empowering, and it's life-changing. It's absolutely life-changing. I got all emotional then because it is, because anybody that knows me knows that, you know, when I was burnt out at the age of 35 from working in the NHS. You know, it's not a bad place to work, but you know, there was just so much pressure, and you know, doing my therapy work and also managing parts of the service was, you know, with a lot of pressure to meet targets and to be questioned and challenged heavily if you didn't meet those targets. It just became too much. So, you know, self-compassion for me, compassion actually was non-existent in the workplace. But, you know, equally self-compassion had disappeared from me too. And so, you know, I made a brave step and brave move to leave, and was fortunate enough to be able to move to Greece. And that's where I connected with myself again. And it's only recently really that I've understood that that's what that process was, you know, that I was able to then, you know, breathe and look after myself, but not just physically, but also emotionally and psychologically, and to say, what do I want, you know, and to give myself the space to do that. So
when you're in those roles, it was the same with my homelessness role. You know, running homelessness hostels and managing those and 90 odd bed spaces and all of those sorts of things. And it's exactly that. You don't get the time to think. And that's the clients that I see and work with on the majority, you know, currently, or have been, you know, for the last kind of 6-7 years. Because the lives are so busy. You absolutely recognize when you've been through that burnout yourself, all you want sometimes is the ability to be able to stop. To be able to be in that space, to be able to breathe, to be able to understand where your thought processes are going and where they're leading you, because outside of that go culture, you know. So
and so it's a, you know, it is a pressure, you know, that I think also links with those statements of, oh, it's self-indulgent and it's lazy, because almost societally and in those professions and in those environments, that's almost kind of the message that you get. It's unspoken, but it's almost the message that you get.
Completely.
And you know, I'm working with someone at the moment. In fact, every single person that I work with, I say to them, before the session with me, nourish yourself. After the session with me, nourish yourself. Don't go straight into work. You know, you need that space before. You need to prepare for the session with me, because they're often very heavy. But you know, afterwards, just be. You know, don't then go, right, I've got to get to the shops now, or I've got to get back into work, I've got to do this. Just after the session, you need that space. And that's compassion in itself. That's saying to yourself, allowing yourself after a process to be able to say, I need to just reflect and pause and be with myself to be able to understand what's just happened within that session, you know.
Absolutely.
And what do I take forward from it? And I guess that's probably pretty much the same with you as well, with your clients, you know, the messages that you give them.
Very much so. Very much so. And the same for, you know, as I said earlier, the same for me as well, is carving in that time rather than carving out that time after a session. Absolutely. Yeah. Putting that buffer around it so that you have that time to just...
And I do the same for me. I do the same for me. You know, I nourish myself before a session and I nourish myself afterwards. So I don't tell people to do. I don't advise people to do what I'm not doing myself.
No, absolutely.
You know, yeah, it's kind of like, you know, afterwards. Yeah.
You know, depending on what's happened within that session, won't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
How you do that, rather.
Because self-compassion is nurturing. Self-compassion is protective. It's aware, and that's, you're absolutely right about boundaries. Boundaries are heavily involved in compassion and self-compassion, because, you know, they guide you. Again, they're like emotions. They guide you. They're kind of, and they're guided by your values. To be able to kind of say what you will accept and what you won't, and what's important to you and what's not, and how you want to live, how you've been living, and how people have been treating you, and expecting you to behave, and actually how you want it to be. So when, you know, there is self-compassion is actually very complex, I think. There's a simplicity to it, but it's actually quite complex, and certainly kind of at the end, you know, when I'm in my work, you know, I don't know, I think it might be the same with yours. There's almost this statement that happens of, I'm feeling very, very different, but I don't know how you've done it, Helen. It's kind of, well, I haven't done it, you've done it.
Absolutely.
I've shown you what needs to be done, but you've done it. And if you invest in yourself, then that change will happen.
Absolutely.
So it's that light bulb moment that you mentioned earlier. You know, it's a massively, massively important thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're coming to up to half an hour. I could talk for hours on this. And I don't think there's been any questions. Oh, hang on. We have. Okay, we've had Jane. Sorry, Jane, I didn't see that comment coming in. I'm really interested as a tarot reader myself, how you use tarot for compassion. Okay.
Okay. So I think with compassion, I mean, it's an approach for starters, but it's also about, I don't know how you read, Jane, but certainly I think naturally with tarot, I'm sure this happens for you as well, but the deeper unconscious issues, shall we say, come up. And so it's really, it feels like a natural progression to be able to look at those with the person you're reading for, and not to open a Pandora's box. You know, if you're just doing a one session, if you like, it's not about opening up something that we then obviously leave them with, but it may well be that it's about looking at those unconscious patterns and kind of just starting to gently bring them into the light for them, really, just as a gentle aha moment. You know, it's certainly, I mean, I've had tarot readings myself, or seen tarot readings myself, where someone has just gone in, you know, on the client, saying this limiting belief and that, and you know, and it's quite harsh, and it frightens people, quite rightly. So for me, it's very much about looking at those, because those unconscious issues always come up in a tarot reading. And so it's about just raising them really gently. Have you thought about this way? Do you recognize that? You know, It's those kind of things, and then allowing it to be client-led, really. So and quite often that gets explored within those situations if the client's ready to. If not, then we leave it. You know, if it's a trigger, then we leave it. But that's quite often how it comes up, because people, I find, with any kind of healing, with the work Helen does, with the tarot readings, they're generally in a position where they want to understand, you know. So that's about bringing in how they've come to this position, or the question that they're asking you about, and really just gently kind of raising what's coming up in the unconscious. I hope that makes sense.
Well, it made sense to me. So I hope I'm sure it made sense to Jane. I don't know whether,
Cool.
I can't see any other comments that came in. So sometimes StreamYard doesn't show them all, a bit like Facebook doesn't show them all. Sometimes it can be a bit, oh, hang on.
Sure. Yeah.
Marvellous, thank you. Yes, Jane was still here saying marvellous, thank you. That's great. So our messages for our compassion in healing and recovery are about looking after yourself in that process, are about exactly what you said, the boundaries, the keeping, understanding your boundaries, keeping those safe, understanding when you might be, if you're supporting someone that's going through that healing process, is kind of understanding what you need for yourself in that, and
Sure.
also as us as heart-centered entrepreneurs doing I think, you know, let's pat ourselves on the back. We do an incredible piece of work with people. We work, and I work, and I'm sure you do too. I work with some amazing people.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's about also how we look after ourselves in that, which is practicing what we preach. In lots of ways.
Very much so.
Practicing what we preach. So Mandy, I have really enjoyed this. It's been a fantastic conversation. Where can people find you so that they can connect with you?
So Facebook and Instagram are both just Mandi Colvin. But make sure, obviously, on Facebook that you go to the professional page, not the personal page. Not that I mind people being on my personal page at all, it's great. But yeah, if you want to look at the tarot and all that sort of thing as well. Yeah. And I'll be putting some more posts up on there. So yeah, both Facebook and Instagram are Mandi Colvin. My website is mandicolvinholistics.com, where you can read more about my services and the packages that I offer. So yeah, that's where I am.
Really? And do you have a free resource at the moment that you're currently sharing with people, or is that on the cards too?
For sure, if you go to my Facebook page, a freebie giveaway download about grounding and protection. Because it's generally something that I talk to my clients about, and again, it's about taking that pause, keeping your energy aligned, and how to protect yourself from others, really kind of leeching that energy.
Brilliant.
Oh, I've frozen.
You froze a bit, but we got you. It's okay. And if you're watching this and you're a woman and you want to come and join, even Mandy's in the group too. I have a free group on Facebook, the Brave Woman Collective, and that group is about shifting those self-belief, those limiting self-belief statements, and embracing self-compassion and rediscovering and redefining your self-belief. So, you know, if you want to be part of that amazing collective of women, come over and join us. But in the meantime, Mandy, Lizzie saying very interesting. Thank you both. Thank you for staying with us, Lizzie. It was lovely that you were part of it.
Thank you, Lizzie.
Mandy, thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving the time this morning to talk with me. And yeah, we might do this again. We might do this again.
It's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh no, thank you for. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much. And I will be uploading this to Instagram as well later on today, so it will stay on the page and in the group. But you'll also be able to find it on Instagram as well a little bit later on, and this will be part of a podcast too. So it's going everywhere. So thank you so much, Mandy, for being here and giving us the time. And I look forward to more conversations with you around compassion in the future. So I will see you soon, and thank you again.
Okay, bye-bye, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.